Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel! If you're new here, my name is Medita and today I am finally going to tell you all about the books I read in October. I also don't have the books with me, which is kind of sad. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say before even getting started. So here are my reviews for all the books I read in October. The first book I read this month is The X-Hex by Erin Sterling, and let me just tell you, I was disappointed. This was supposed to be a witch's story with revenge and curses and cool plot lines and maybe a man who was groveling and begging for forgiveness on his knees, and we didn't get that. So in this book, Vivian, the main character, curses Reese, her ex-boyfriend, and I was rooting for Vivian. I was like, yes, continue cursing him. I am cheering you on. I love cursing men. And then we get to meet Reese, and for some reason, the book just stops being good at that point because all we get from his perspective is, oh my gosh, I want to fuck Vivian. She's so hot. She's as hot as she was the first time I met her.
Shut the fuck up.
I don't want to hear about you being horny, okay? I really don't. I want to hear about you trying to beg for her forgiveness on your knees, but for some reason they were already and way too quickly. On top of that, we have this extremely big plot twist slash reveal, and I was like, well, what the fuck? Because even though the curse is, I guess, uncursed, I was still baffled with the revelation we had. Are we not gonna try to, I don't know, get justice? Because apparently we didn't. So my expectations weren't fulfilled. I got something else, which is a man who I don't like. I needed more begging, maybe even more magic, because the curse sounded so cool and then Reese was just there. Then I read Not the Witch You Wed, and I could not stop laughing out of embarrassment while reading this book. Why? Well, this is a werewolf story with mating. I love werewolf mating stories. Those are my guilty pleasure. When I used to read those on Wattpad, I was entertained. I was having the time of my life. Sadly, in this book, I wasn't, because as soon as there's an alpha involved, the book gets ruined because almost every third word is alpha. This book basically is about Violet and Lincoln, who is the alpha of the Northern American pack. Yeah, that ruined the book. Every person addressed him with the word Alpha Lincoln. Please, calm down. I get he is the alpha. You do not have to say it every fucking sentence. On top of that, this book was a fake mating slash fake dating story. Now I have to give a spoiler warning because the reason this book was ruined for me is a giant spoiler, but I have to mention it, okay? I then had made up in my head that the plot would go like this, right? Violet and Lincoln fall in love in their fake mating process, right? And then Violet's or Lincoln's actual mate would show up and they'd be like, you're in my spot. Get the fuck out of here. And then Violet and Lincoln would stand up for each other and say, no! Fuck mates, fuck this tradition, I want to be with her. Yeah, we didn't get that because, shocker, Violet and Lincoln are actually true mates. Yeah, what? That doesn't make any sense because Violet and Lincoln used to date in high school. And they try to explain it by Violet being a late bloomer, but Violet is in her 30s. And it just ruined the entire plotline for me because I was like, what the heck is this? This makes no sense. Then I read Payback's a Witch and I was dun, yet again disappointed. The blurb told me that this was a revenge plot with bisexual witches against a weird ex-boyfriend who would cheat on them in high school. I was excited, okay? I was ready for action. Yeah, we did not get action. So basically, we just got a lot of adjectives. You know what this felt like? It felt like an essay that had a word count and you would try to reach it by adding more and more adjectives in front of every noun. On top of that, the romance just wasn't as developed as I wanted it to be. Where is the tension bantering phase? Because it wasn't there. I was missing that and I needed it. And then on top of that, there is the revenge plot. Because why were you spending weeks, sleepless nights, hours of hard work in the forest planning out what you were gonna do to Gareth, only for him to walk away like a child who didn't get a candy? I was expecting Gareth to blow up or something. Everything was there and it could have been this amazing story, but then somehow all the sources that were there to make an amazing story were swirled in a way to give me disappointment. Then I, however, read a book about witches that I really liked, and that's The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. And oh my god, I read this book on a foggy night. The sun was already setting. It started raining, and I read it in one sitting into the middle of the night, and it was so good. Basically, in the story, we have Lexi, who is this girl who's trying to figure out why all these kids keep disappearing out of their beds and into the middle of nowhere, and why at the same time this boy keeps showing up in the smoke and then disappearing as quickly as possible. And she's like, what the fuck's happening? But she was such a great, strong character character with such an amazing character development. I absolutely loved her. I loved the relationships between her mother, her sister, the Smoke Boy, and her uncle developed throughout the story. It was really interesting. I loved the description of the world around them and like the town, the forest and everything. So good. I was entertained. I was seeing images in my head. And then the Near Witch story, yeah, that was good. Then I sadly read the prequel, which is called The Ashborn Boy. And I'm gonna be fully honest, I wish I hadn't read this. Smoke Boy has a really mysterious past, and in the Near Witch, we don't find out a lot about it. We get a few hints, and that makes him so mysterious and so good. And then in this book, we get his entire past, obviously, and I just didn't like that because he was a better character because he was that mysterious. You know how like in books, mysterious characters have like a shadow casting on them, and then now the sun came out and the shadow is gone and we know everything about him and the mystery about him is gone. Then I read The Body Artist, and it was the most disgusting and disturbing and weird book I read this month. I am so confused about what this book was, what the message was, and why I read it, and why this was even written in the first place. I did not like this at all. So basically, I thought this book was about divorce and a woman post-divorce trying to figure out what her life is gonna be like. It's none of that. There's a scene where she scrubs dead skin cells off her body and cleans her feet. And for some reason, we get that very detailed with adjectives and smell and everything, and why. I did not have to read that, but sadly I did.
Fuck no.
I wish I could erase this book from my memory. Then I read Catalyst by Laurie Halse Anderson, and yet again, I was disappointed. We have Kate, who is at this point in her life where she's so anxious and totally scared of the future. She just applied for colleges, and those thoughts were represented so well. I related to her emotions in the beginning so much. I was like, yes, this is how I feel about my future too. Then the plot gets full, and just a lot of other things take up more space in the book. And then when the plot twist happened, I knew I was supposed to cry, but I didn't because I didn't feel anything for the characters, and I just kind of sat there and thought, well, this fucking sucks, and continued reading. Mind you, I cry very easily in books, okay? I cry when people are happy in books, and this book just didn't make me feel anything. The more I read, the less I felt, and the emotions were sucked out of me. Then I read History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. Every single character that he writes, I somehow hate. Don't know why or if that is Adam's goal. And if it is, then he succeeded. Theo's best friend Griffin, who he then also dated for a while, died. When he died, he was in a relationship with Jackson. So now Theo and Jackson meet. They don't like each other because Theo hates Jackson for being in a relationship with Griffin, and Jackson hates Theo for ever being in a relationship with Griffin. I was so excited. I was thinking, oh my gosh, we're gonna have so much tension, so many fighting scenes.
Yeah.
And then we got so we got a lot of flashback scenes to Griffin when he was still in a relationship with Theo, and that made me hate Griffin. First of all, he was an awful friend, in my opinion, to Theo. So then I also didn't like Theo because Theo dropped everyone for Griffin. And then I was Jackson, and I also didn't like him because Jackson is one of those possessive boyfriends because he wouldn't like you being with anybody except him. I liked one person in this book, and he was a side character, and he was mistreated by Griffin and Theo. I wanted to hug him so badly. And then I was supposed to cry, I'm pretty sure, but I just didn't because I just didn't like any of the characters. So it was just a great experience. Then I finally finished Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer, and yet this book only gets 3 stars max. Because why did I hate Juliet so much? Juliet and her best friend are those people that made me not like high school. They were those people that judged you for rumors and then put you into boxes. The only thing I like about Juliet is her relationship with her dad because that was fucking relatable. Wow, the daddy issues in this book, I felt it. I felt it to my core. I was crying because I felt so related to how Juliet talked with her dad. I was like, oh my gosh, that's literally me. And then we have Declan, who is definitely hurt. He went through a lot, and I'm so sorry for him. He had some really dark thoughts that I felt really related to as well. But I did not like Declan and Juliet's relationship. I think they should have stayed friends. Declan also didn't sound really believable whenever he talked about Juliet and how he liked her. And at one point, I thought this book was gonna go down a really dark path. Thankfully, it didn't, but I was scared to finish this book, okay? Then I read Skin of the Sea, and oh my god, I loved this book. I don't know if that makes any sense, but while I was reading this book, I felt alive, and colors were everywhere. The description of the world was just so good. Such a great story, amazing characters, and I ordered the sequel right away because the cliffhanger this book ended on, I was not doing well. So this book is about Simi, who is a mermaid, and she helps souls descend to the afterlife. But then she rescues a boy out of the ocean, which you shouldn't do, #rebel. From that point on, this book is full of adventure, tension, and me feeling a lot of fear for all these characters because I was scared somebody was gonna die. The description of the different gods that were involved and their origin stories were also so great. I loved it. Whenever I saw a reference to the story of the Little Mermaid, I was giggling because I thought, oh my god, this is such a great way to include these. And now I'm even more excited about the live action movie for the Little Mermaid because this was so good. Then I finally finished the Atlas 6, and I just want to say I am a Parisa stan till the day I die. I love Parisa. I absolutely love the beginning where we get introduced to all the characters. That also made me fall in love with Parisa because her POV is so much fun because the way she talks about manipulation and using her powers. I wish we had a bit more of Rena because she was kind of the forgotten one in my opinion in this book. Yeah, I'm kind of mad we don't know more about her because I'm like... The power usage in this book was so good. Libby did something and I was like, oh, she is so strong. I love her now too. I also really like the romance between Libby and Nico. That was kind of cute. Honestly, we live a little bit of a rival to lover romance story with lots of tension and lots of teasing. It was great. The mystery was amazing behind the institution. I just hope that we get a little bit more of critique because yeah, as much as I like the characters, I do not like the institution. And I'm wondering how the plot twist will play into this. I wonder if we're gonna have some betrayal tropes. That would be so good. So excited for it. Next, I read Sweetheart, and that book was also just okay. And that is again because I was bored while reading the book. Basically, this book's about Kieran and Charisse, and Charisse is the single woman who doesn't want to date. And I love that plotline, honestly, and her baking scenes were great. I wanted to bake and I got hungry by reading it. But the third act breakup was just so bad and boring because I, at that point, had forgotten about what actually happened in the beginning. I was like, oh, right, that happened. Oopsies. So that was disappointing. and I also just, that sounds really stupid, but this book has a marriage plot line. Fully honestly, I would love to have a book about the married couple because they had more chemistry throughout their entire book than the two of them. And I don't really get why Charisse hated Kieran in the first place. It was a bit confusing. So yeah, this book was okay. Then I read Gothicana by Runnix, and I am literally so mad about this book, it's not even funny. Let me tell you why. This book is supposed to be this dark academia, mysterious book about the school, and there's kind of magic and killing and disappearing, but we never get any answers. And basically, it's explained in this book that some questions don't need answers. No! I picked up this book because the plot sounded interesting, and I wanted to know why the things happen. So we have Corvina, who's a new student at the school, and the school was described in such a beautiful way, and I was excited. Okay, we had so many mysterious things already happening. We had the disappearance, we had the purple eyes, we have the birds. I was so excited for answers, especially because Corvina obviously went on this like mission to find out who that is, and I fucking can't because nothing is explained. Imagine Pretty Little Liars, and at some point Spencer says to Arya, you know, some questions don't need answers. We don't have to find out who A is. Huh? No, bad book, bad book. Then I read Cemetery Boys, and this book is now one of my new favorites. We had an amazing relationship between people that almost were like siblings, but they were cousins. So Jadrila and Maritza. They reminded me so much of my relationship with my siblings, and I loved it. They would have risked their life for the other person, and it was just so good to read about. My emotions, okay? Then we had Julian, the amazing, funny character that made me laugh so many times throughout the book, who was a great friend. Then we obviously have the mystery part of this book because Julian is dead and we don't know why. And throughout this book, we find out why he dies. And oh my god, that plot twist, I did not see it coming, which is great. I was sitting there on my bed, jaw to the floor. I was shooketh. The feelings I felt, no, I was not doing well, okay? I was not doing well. I also thought the culture and family aspect in this book was really interesting because we obviously have Yadriel, who is trying to get his family to accept his gender. And I teared up twice. I once cried out of happiness, which rarely happens, okay? And I once cried out of sadness, but the focus of growth and found family is amazing. And I also heard that there's a sequel to this. Excuse me? I am so excited. Now I have to talk about a trilogy I read, and that is called the Never and Night trilogy. Why did I decide to pick up the first book in the series? I do not know. I saw the book on my shelf and I thought, let me read a Peter Pan retelling. Yeah, that was the worst decision I ever made. The first book is called A Land of Never and Night, and I gave the book a whopping 2 stars. So this book is obviously a retelling where a descendant of Wendy ends up with Hook. We definitely had a lot of weird scenes where we saw way too many naked men that were way too close to the female protagonist without her allowance. The second book then got 1 star because I was just so fucking annoyed. Moira, right, the granddaughter of Wendy, has so many questions. She's like, why the fuck am I in Neverland? Is Peter good or is Hook good? You expect these people to give her answers, but none of them do. And then we get to book 3. Basically, in book 3, we find out that Hook made a wish, and his wish was that he had true love. Cute wish, right? Innocent wish. Yeah, no, it's not innocent, okay? It's not. Ever since he wished for love, he always thought that one of Wendy's descendants would be his true love in the future. Yeah, so he decides to stalk Wendy's family. It's not Wendy's daughter who is his true love, it's Wendy's granddaughter. Do you want to know when he finds that out? When she is 6 fucking years old. Huh? I was like, am I reliving the Jacob scene in Twilight where he imprints on a fucking baby? Because that's what this feels like. Hook comes to the human world and he starts stalking this 6-year-old. Then the mother realizes and she's like, she confronts Hook. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. You're gonna tell Hook to leave her alone because she's a 6-year-old child, right? No, she encourages it. Why? I will never know and I don't want to know. And then we get these amazing quotes that I'm just gonna read out to you because if I had to suffer through this, you will have to suffer through this too. Are you ready? Because you are not. Buckle in. Backstory. There was a smut scene, a very detailed smut scene. Moira points out that Hook curses a lot. And then Hook says to Moira that he knew that Moira would like the cursing because Moira's mother told Hook that she had a prudish streak that hit something a bit more saucy. Huh? I'm going to need to digest the sentence and then hopefully throw it back up because it's so disgusting. And then we have another scene which makes me want to throw up even more. Direct quote from Hook. By the way, Moira already knows that Hook stalked her and she kind of likes that. I starved for news of you, always wanting to know more and more. The more I learned, the harder I fell. I loved you before we ever met. Why do I even read books? I do not get the high rating of this book. I do not get anything anymore. I hate life. Then I read Writers and Lovers, but this book is definitely not about what it says it is about on the blurb, because the blurb says it's about a romance, a love triangle, and it's not. It's about Casey struggling at life and maybe being in her midlife crisis, and if I were Casey, I probably would have cried and never left my bed. This book is really just about Casey healing, first of all, through trauma, because she goes through a lot. She has issues. She has mommy and daddy issues, and it's very clear. She has parental issues. So whenever Oscar or Silas was there, I was like, okay, cool. Can I please go back to Casey being alone and Casey trying to heal? Because both of the love interests just weren't that good. We have Oscar, who's this, he's a daddy. And I loved Casey's relationship with the 2 sons, but Oscar was just not a likable man. Oscar could not be with a person who is more successful than him. And I hate men like that, so I hate Oscar automatically. And then we have Silas, and we just don't know a lot about him. Honestly, he is just there. He breathes air. You know what I mean? I cared about Casey and her healing from her past, and her finally then getting better at life. Slay. Then I read A Dance with a Fey Prince, and this book made me realize that I am not into arranged marriages with fairies. So this book is about Katria and Fenwood, right? And honestly, Katria was a pretty interesting character when she was alone. She was really obsessed with her horse, which was kind of funny. She had a lot of family issues, and I was excited to read about her and her healing process. And then we have Lord Fenwood. He's mysterious. He stays in his room, but then he turns out to be a fairy, obviously. And as soon as that happens, the book gets bad because then Lord Fenwood's actual personality comes out, and he is like a child. Imagine this. You are sitting next to a grown man and you eat a candy bar, and when he asks you if he can have a piece, you say, oh, I'm so sorry, I already ate everything. This man would start crying. I don't know who you are and why you act like that, but I do not like you. The only good thing about this book was the plot twist, because I did not guess that. But the plot twist brought even more confusion to my brain because of this thing called family relations. Moral of the story is, though, I just don't think I like fae men dating young mortal women. Then I read Cry Wolf, and I regret reading this with my entire life. The only reason I I bought this book in the first place was because the cover was kind of cool and gave me Halloween vibes. I really wish I didn't. Why, you may ask? Well, because this book is about 3 grown men who would probably piss a circle around you if you were to ever date them and growl at any male figure, aka they're awful stalkerish men. Love that, don't we? No. And I got even more confused because the female main character is supposed to be this really strong werewolf, you know what I mean? But she somehow doesn't do a lot. The men are still the more prevalent characters in this book, but it's about her. Then I read 2 German books. I read New Chances, which is the 5th book in the Green Valley series by Lily Lucas, and I was so disappointed. I don't know if this is true or not, but in the acknowledgement it says that this is the last book of the Green Valley series. And if it is the last book, then this is the most disappointing book ever because the ending is so bad. So this book had a lot of potential. We have a single dad who gets a nanny, and that nanny is the woman he kissed the night before at the bar. Amazing build up, lots of drama. We love it, right? But then the book turns bad because I think the first kiss happened at like 60% in, and then nothing happens. And then the last 5 pages is the plot that should have been spread out on at least 50 pages. Honestly, if that was cut out, I think the book would be way better. The ending would be way better and not that open. I also just think this book is way too short. It's like 200 something pages. I was disappointed. It has such a great beginning and the end just really wasn't good. The last book I read is the Dunbridge Academy book 1, which is also a German book by Ashborn. This is a high school book about a boarding school in Scotland. The description, amazing. I loved everything. But then we have explicit smut scenes between the 17-year-olds with the word erection and all that stuff. And that's just unnecessary. I think it should have been fade to black. If we put that aside, the plot just wasn't good either because we start off with one main plot line, which is basically Emma trying to find out where her father is. Then, however, we add another plot line about a relationship. We add a plot line about teachers and their secrets, and we add another plot line about Henry's family. Calm down. Like 2 of those could have been cut out. And I also just don't like how some of the characters were treated in this book because they didn't do anything wrong. Maybe that's just me. And yeah, that was basically it. Kind of sad that we ended on a bad note, but I at least had a few books this month that were really good. This is the end of my October monthly wrap-up video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of my content, you can subscribe. I hope you all have a great day, evening, nighttime, morning, whatever time zone you're in. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Go read a book, read Cemetery Boys or Skin of the Sea. Again, have a great day, happy reading, and see you next time. Bye!